I'm going to give you my biggest secret to force muscle growth on your body. So if you're watching this, I'm assuming that at some point you've plateaued. You're just not making the gains that you want to be making. So I'm going to show you how to break through that and force muscle growth on. So this is something that I've been doing for years, but it really occurred to me the other day when I was doing this, what I'm going to explain to you, that, hey, this is what has literally forced muscle on my body. Well, aside from having a good diet, making sure that your nutrition's in check, making sure that you're eating adequate amount of protein, and just basically making sure that you're cycling between, gaining mass, losing body fat, gaining mass, losing body fat. And every time you're doing that, you're kind of going to net more and more muscle. But if you're doing that already, then that's check one, right? You should be obviously doing that. So aside from that, what do you need to be doing to force muscle on? And what you need to be doing is what I call an inventory check of your body. So your body is your own science experiment. So basically what that means is you got to test things on your body. How do you know, for example, if low volume actually works for you? Maybe Mike Menser and high intensity type training, low volume, maybe that works for you. Maybe it doesn't. But how do you know this? How do you know this to be true? The only way to know this is to keep detailed notes on yourself. So I basically have an Excel spreadsheet that I have that contains all the data and every experiment that I've ever tried on my body, and I know what worked and what doesn't. So basically I have like an inventory of exercises, for example. So let's just say biceps. I have an inventory of bicep exercises on my Excel spreadsheet. I have the weights that I've lifted, what my PRs are for those lifts, and where I feel it the most, where I don't feel it. It's basically like my own journal for working out. Now, it's not a workout journal per se, but it tells me, okay, when I want to grow my biceps, I need to be doing 20 sets per workout in order to do that. The only way that I've come across that to actually force muscle on is to be able to take those detailed notes on myself. So what I would recommend for you to do is to do the same. Get an Excel spreadsheet, use a Google Sheet, doesn't matter. There's so many free options you could use, but keep detailed notes. Use different tabs for different body parts. Chest, back, legs, use a different tab. In there, focus on the exercises. Which exercises do you do that you feel the most? Which ones do you do that you feel the biggest bang for your buck? Which exercises do you do that you don't feel connected to at all? You need to be able to know this, and then what you do is you, over time, create the optimal program for you utilizing that data. So for example, my Excel spreadsheet, I've been using it for years, so it's got a year's worth of data in there. So I look back and I say, okay, for me, regular barbell curls don't do anything for my biceps. So instead, I'm going to focus on what I do feel, which is dumbbell curls, and utilizing that more. And over time, utilizing the stuff that agrees with my body is going to force muscle growth on. Because sometimes we follow our influencers that we like online, or we follow, our idols like Arnold or this person and that person, and what works for them might not work for you. You need to find what works for you. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that you can't steal stuff from each of them. So for example, Arnold talked about barbell curls and heavy cheek curls. For me, that does nothing for my biceps. That's just like a total body movement for me at that point. A lot of shoulders and a lot less of biceps. But when I switch it to just dumbbells and utilize those same principles that Arnold talked about, I get results. It's just certain movements work and certain movements don't work. And the same thing with this. So I actually have a tab on my Google Sheets that talks about volume. So it's just a volume tab. And when I click the volume tab, it talks about how I break down each one of these muscle groups. So for example, for me, for biceps, I have to start with a mass building movement. And for me, a mass building movement is a dumbbell movement. My second movement should always be a lengthening or thickness type movement. So a preacher curl or incline. The third movement for me that always works in this order is some type of peaking movement. So like concentration curls or a cable behind curl. And then the last thing that I usually do for biceps is a brachioradialis movement. And in that order is what works for me. And then I also know how many sets per biceps I need for a minimum and a maximum that I need in order to get there. So I do this for each body part. It sounds really time consuming, but making this investment in your training is literally going to force muscle on you. And in a couple of years, you're going to look back and you're going to have a bunch of data and you're going to say, I know exactly what I need to do to get my body to where it needs to go. So I recommend you do the same. Take deep inventory of your body and just focus on looking at what works and what doesn't. And if something doesn't work, that's great too. And you want to have that data, because the more you keep track of what doesn't work, the more you're going to start doing what actually does work. And that's how we're going to force more muscle on your frame. If you guys have questions about any of this stuff, you want to pick up any of my programs, you can click the link below. And until next time, this was Anthony, BB Fitness Center. I'll catch you on the next one.